I've already removed the point wire and the condenser wire from the points. Before I take the point plate off, I'm going to mark the location of the pillar bolts on the point plate itself. This will make it easier for me to time the points when I reinstall the point plate. Take a large flat blade screwdriver, make sure it's large, and carefully remove the pillar bolts. After you've removed the pillar bolts, go ahead and remove the point plate, exposing the advance unit. Now, take a suitable socket and carefully remove the nut on the advance unit and carefully remove the advance unit itself. I keep emphasizing the word carefully, bear with me on that. The reason why I do that is I've seen a lot of people break these bolts off. With the advance unit removed, and now's a good time as any to check for oil leaking from the seal in your cone cover and for any unusual metal deposits that may have been caused from the screws that hold the point to the plate and the condenser as well. This one looks pretty clean, so we're going to go on to servicing the advance unit. Before I remove the cam from the advance unit, I like to check it for play, and that is by shaking it up and down and side to side. If you get any play at all, either the cam itself or the advance unit base is no good and it should be replaced. Now I have no play at all in this particular cam, so I'm going to go ahead and remove it from the base of the unit itself. Notice when I do that one side of the cam is flat and the other side is rounded. When you reinsert this back onto the shaft, you'll notice a little set pin located in the base of the advance unit. That will line up with the flat of the cam. Now with the cam off, I will also be checking for any oblong holes where the advance units are attached to the plate, and I'll be looking to see if the springs are broken, and if they are, replace them now. After you've inspected your advance unit, wipe it down and then apply a light coat of grease to the springs, to the cams, and to the shaft, and reinstall the cam itself back onto the shaft, like so. And we'll be after you've done this, we'll be ready to reinstall it into the cone cover. I've already reinstalled new points and condenser on the point plate, and I'm ready to begin the reassembly of the advance unit into the cone cover. One point that I want to make to you is as you turn your advance unit over, like I've done with this one, you'll notice that there's a roll pin inserted in the inner portion of the advance unit. This roll pin must line up with the slot in the end of your cam. Carefully put the advance unit back into the cone, making sure that you line that pin up, and lightly put the advance unit bolt into the advance unit itself. Don't fully tighten it down yet. Gently reinstall the point plate over the advance unit. Remember to carefully lift the rubbing block out of the way, and reinstall the pillar bolts. I've lightly reinstalled the pillar bolts back onto the point plate in relation to the yellow marks that I made before I removed it. And I've made sure that my rubbing block on the points is not resting anywhere on the advance unit cam. If you're at this point, now you can begin to lightly tighten the advance unit bolt. Make sure that you don't over tighten it because you can snap them off. After the bolt has been tightened, I'm going to rotate the motor so that the rubbing block will be on the widest part of the cam, and I'll begin to set the point gap to 20 thousandths. If you can see on your screen, I do have some gap right now with these points. That's one reason why I like to mark my point plate before I take it out. It really helps me when I go to do the final point gap. These points are closed. I'm going to open them up a little. Let's go ahead and gap them to 20 thousandths. When you loosen the point-based screw, you want to just loosen it enough to create a drag on it so that when you adjust the point plate itself, that it won't be snapping back on you. And I'll test it. Yeah, that feels pretty good. Notice I've only attached one wire to the points, and that's the point wire itself. I purposely left my condenser wire loose for the next step after this. I'm taking a 20 thousandths feeler gauge and inserting it. I have a slight amount of drag. Let me caution you at this point. When you insert it in, watch the point arm itself. And if you see it moving up when you insert the feeler gauge in, that means that your gap is too small. As you can see, I can feel the drag and the arm is not moving. I'm going to go ahead and tighten down the point screw now and reinstall the feeler gauge to make sure that my point gap hasn't moved. Having finished this, I'm going to rotate the motor so that the rubbing block on the points is now on the narrow part of the cam. And I'm going to recheck the point gap for this, which is the front cylinder. What we want to do is to make sure we're within no more than 2 thousandths of the gap on the wide part of the cam. If you read any more than 22 thousandths or less than 18 thousandths, you're going to want to move the engine so that the rubbing block is off the cam, re-loosen up your advance unit nut, and lightly tap it with a rubber mallet and reseat it and perform your gap procedure again. I'm reading about 21 thousandths, so that's acceptable. So at this point, I'm going to stop the point gaps, because I don't need to do it again, and I'm going to remove my condenser unit and prepare to static time the motor. Now, the reason why I had you check the point gap at both the narrow lobe and the wide lobe is because one of the biggest complaints I've received from customers is that they get a different spark plug reading from one cylinder than they do the other. And a lot of times they want to tear their motor down and look for problems that may not exist. I usually tell them the first step that they should undertake before they rip the top end off is to check the gap at both points on the point cam, and that if the gap varies more than 2 thousandths maximum, that in effect may cause the rich reading on the spark plug itself. Remember that the width of the point gap relates to timing, and the wider the point gap, the bigger the difference in the time. With the point gap properly checked, I have removed both push rod covers on the front cylinder, and I'm holding them up out of the way with our clothespin trick. What I'm going to do is I'm going to rotate the motor until the intake valve opens and closes. We have the exhaust valve closing. Here comes the intake valve opening. It's beginning to close. I stop right there. Now, at this point, I'm going to install a special tool made by AccuTime to hold the advance unit open. If you don't have this tool and you have some other method, go ahead and do so. I prefer this tool. It's inexpensive and easy to use. Now, I've already removed the condenser from the point plate, and I've done that intentionally because sometimes it gets in the way of the tool. Now we have the advance unit locked in a fully open position. Doing this, we're going to go around to the other side of the motorcycle and remove the timing plug. I'm going to slowly rotate the rear wheel on this bike to bring the timing mark into the window. If you're using your wheel like I am, make sure that you turn the wheel in the normal rotation of travel. This is an 80 cubic inch motor, so I'm looking for a dot instead of a line. If you have a 74, then you'll be looking for the line. Place either the dot or the line in the middle of the window, and now we'll go back to the other side of the bike. I'm using a multimeter to do the static timing on this particular motorcycle. Some people use continuity testers, some people use buzz boxes. For me, it's easier to use the multimeter. If you're using a multimeter, what you want to do is to put the switch in the RX1 position, touch your two leads together, and go ahead and zero out the terminals. After you've done that, connect one of the leads to ground and the other lead to the points in the point plate, like I've done. And you notice that I'm reading about 10 ohms. Ignore it. Don't worry about that at this point. When we get to the proper position for the points to open, this needle on the meter will move from the right side of the scale and will come over to the left side of the scale, indicating an open condition. Excuse me, as you remember, we left the pillar bolts slightly loose so that we have some drag on the point plate. I'm going to go ahead and move the point plate till I begin to open the points. If you hear some static on your TV screen, please ignore it. It's just the interference between the metal on the motor and the wireless mic that I'm wearing. As you can see, the needle's beginning to move. Okay, there we are. I'll lightly tighten down the two pillar bolts. Remember, I said lightly. What we're going to do now is we're going to stop at this point, and I'm going to back the motor up slightly so that I pull that timing mark towards the rear of the window. Then I'm going to reintroduce it into the window, and as I do so, the needle, which will have already returned to zero, will come back up to the infinite mark. When it does, I want to make sure that my timing mark is somewhere within the window on the motor. I back my timing mark to the rear of the hole until the points have closed. And what I'm going to do now is slowly bring that timing mark back into the window until the points open. Okay, my points are open, and I come around and check, and my timing mark is in the middle of the hole, and I can't get it any better than that. All you have to do is get that timing mark within the hole itself. I've removed my timing tool from the advance unit and reinstalled the condenser to the point plate. I'm going to now go ahead and put my push rod tube covers on and move on to strobe timing the motor.